Welcome to my kitchen. Today, we're talking about sitting at the table, which is why I'm sitting in my toddler's chair, because I thought it was like good. Anyways. If you are struggling with your child sitting at the table, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Taylor. I talk about healthy relationships with food for kids. Quick disclaimer, this video is for education purposes and is not medical advice. Always reach out to your child's pediatrician or dietitian if you're concerned about their health, their nutrition, or their growth. So if someone comes and tells me that their kid is having trouble sitting at the table, I have lots of questions for them. So I'm gonna talk to you like I would talk to that person who comes and tells me that. So the first question that I ask is, are they comfortable sitting in their chair? Many experienced feeding professionals will recommend something called the 90-90-90 seating position at the table. So this means we have a 90-degree angle at the hips, 90-degree angle at the knees, and 90-degree angle at the ankles, which essentially means that your child is sitting in a chair where they're not like leaning back, because some of the high chairs on the market are like really lean back, so we don't want that. And we want their feet to be supported, so they're not like dangling. Now, I wanna give a caveat here because there's no actual research to say that this is like the best seating position. There may be some feeding challenges where your child's position needs to be adjusted, and you should definitely be working with a feeding therapist or a speech therapist or an occupational therapist if that's the case. But in general, just making sure that your child is supported and comfortable at the table is a good first step. So for example, my kid was sitting in a regular kitchen chair with like I think it was OXO Tot brand booster seat on the top of the chair. But the booster seat kind of like stopped low on his back, and so there wasn't really like a lot of support on his back, and his feet like couldn't sit comfortably on the base of the chair underneath the table, so they were kind of like sticking out. So when I changed him from that like little round booster seat on top of the chair to this is our chair right now. I have another video about this chair. It's the Cybex Limo chair. But when I switched him from sitting in that booster seat on top of the chair to this toddler chair, his like meal times got so much better. I really like this Cybex Limo chair for toddlers because it's super easy to adjust, and like there's like a little side. Like we also have a Stoka trip trap for my 18-month-old toddler, and he still fits in like the infant bucket seat, but when we take that bucket seat off, there's not really like a side rail to like hold him in. So I love the Cybex Limo chair. Also love the Stoka trip trap. They're both really good options for toddler seats to be supportive because they can like go through adulthood. As you can see, it like supports me sitting here. Another question I ask, especially if it's like a baby or like an older baby / young toddler, so like the TABY phase, is are they ready to switch from sitting in their high chair with the tray to moving to the table? I see this a lot actually, that babies get like frustrated, or young toddlers get really frustrated with sitting at the high chair. Maybe there's not enough space, maybe they want to be at the table just like the big kids, and so taking the tray off and just scooching them up to the table can be like a really exciting change for them and possibly improve mealtime a lot. That was our experience with both of my two older kids. When they were ready to be done with the tray, they let us know. So with my youngest, we didn't use the tray a whole lot. We just started pushing him up to the table as early as we could. Next, is there something about the environment that's bothering your kid? And this is really important for sensory sensitive kiddos. So things like really loud sounds, strong smells, itchy fabric on the chair seat or maybe in their clothes, hard seats. These can all make it uncomfortable to sit at the table and can just add an extra layer of like difficulty with meal times. So here's an example. For me, I really struggle when there's a lot of loud noises all at one time. So right before dinner, I always have a hard time with noise because like the vent fan is going, my husband is cooking, so he's got cooking noises. He usually has music going. The kids are getting whiny and hangry, so they're being loud. And then sometimes the dog is barking or maybe the vacuum's going. It's just too much for me. I use my Loop earbuds. Here's a picture of what they look like to like dampen the sound, and that really helps me. But like if we sit down at mealtime and the vent fan is still going and the music is still going, it makes it really hard for me to regulate enough to experience my food, enjoy my food, and eat. So for me, not having a ton of loud incoming noises can help me at the mealtime like have a better experience. And kids are the same way. So perhaps there is like stinky fish in the oven and it's like really strong smelling, and maybe your kid doesn't like that smell and it really bothers them and it makes it hard for them to enjoy the mealtime experience. So something like opening a window, lighting a candle, depending on your kid's needs. Maybe it can be like the sun is glaring in from the window and like hitting them right in the eyes. That's happened to us before, and we've had to like rearrange the seats at our table because we didn't have blinds on that one window. So how can you figure out if this is happening? First, sit in your kid's chair at mealtime to see, like, is there a draft? Is the sun in their eyes? Ask them how they're feeling, and then you may need to offer some sensory support. So like earbuds or a wet washcloth at the table. Maybe they don't like when their hands are messy and they need to wipe their hands. Maybe they need some sort of like visual stimulation, like a lava lamp timer, which I've showed in this video here. Just some sort of sensory support. And remember that your kid doesn't have to be neurodivergent to have sensory needs. Everybody has sensory needs. So just keep that in mind. Does your kid need a safe outlet for wiggles? Is it hard for them to sit at the table because they have so much energy? They are a sensory seeker. They crave movement, and sitting still is just not their jam at this point in their life, or maybe ever. So check out this video where I talk about pre-meal sensory activities to help like get those wiggles out and help your kid feel regulated at the table. Other things that you can do at mealtime to meet these sensory needs that your kid might have are fidgets at the table, like stress balls or like little spiky rings to squeeze, as long as it's safe, like depending on your child's age, perhaps like a wobble cushion under their bum or under their feet. You can tie an exercise band around the legs of the chair for them to kick and stretch and push on. That's gone really well in our house. My daughter loves that. You can even offer alternative seating options, like a place for your kid to just stand and eat. They can stand at the counter depending on how tall they are. You can push a learning tower up against the tower. You can have them sit on an exercise ball, or even put the exercise ball like one of those chairs to keep it stable at the table. Families of kids who are neurodivergent may find these tips especially useful. An occupational therapist can be really helpful in determining if any of those tools will work for your family. Next, I ask parents, is there a safe food on your kid's plate? A plate without safe food can be very intimidating to kids. They can feel overwhelmed or even scared to come to the table if there's not something that makes them feel comfortable on their plate. And over time, this can lead to resistance coming to the table. So yes, always, always, always a safe food on the plate. Does your child struggle with transition? So like stopping a really fun activity, stopping screen time, coming in from outside and going to the table can be really hard. One, because the other activities they were doing are probably more fun than just sitting down and eating. And transitions are just hard for some people, my kids, myself included. So this is when like sensory supports or other environmental supports can make coming to the table easier. So for my kids, this looks like carrying a weighted stuffed animal or their favorite stuffed animal, because if they have that item, that comfort item with them during the transition, it makes it easier. Using a visual timer. Okay, I'll show you what one looks like. Here's one visual timer that we have. It's 5 minutes. Can you see that? The lighting's kind of funky, but visual timer, it's like an hourglass. And then this is my favorite visual timer. You can like set the time in 5-minute increments up to an hour, and like we use it all the time, but it is kind of loud when it beeps. So keep that in mind. Timers might stress some kids out, so this just depends on your kid and what you think is going to work for them. Okay, here is a big one. Is your child too hungry? A child that is very hungry is a dysregulated child. A person that is very hungry is a dysregulated person. Me, I do not do well being hungry. I get hangry, and it's not good for anybody. So if I'm over hungry, mealtimes are unpleasant. My stomach is hurting. Maybe I feel like bloated when I get over hungry. It's just like not a comfortable mealtime experience. So if your kid is getting too hungry before dinner, you may consider adjusting their meal or their snack schedule, or offering like an appetizer plate. The appetizer plate has worked so good in our house. I'll put out a plate of like fruits and vegetables, hummus, maybe some cheese, and I will just let them munch on it while we're prepping dinner. Because, okay, so there's some interesting science to this. Or when you encounter like the sight and the smell of food, it makes you hungry. So of course, when you start cooking and like maybe the garlic smells really good, or the spices are going, or something just smells so delicious, you feel hungry, but your kid is already hungry because maybe they had a long day of school and now they're like really hungry, but dinner is not going to be ready for 15 minutes. So what are you going to do? Are you going to serve them, a whole meal, and then they're not going to be hungry for dinner, that's certainly an option and you can do whatever's good for your family. But in our house, we really like to sit down and share a meal together. So in order to help them, not eat a whole separate meal in the 15 minutes before dinner, but also listen to their body cues and feed them when they're hungry, I do an appetizer plate. So they can munch on it as much as they'd like. It's a really great way to get some fruits and veggies into their diet because they think it's fun. They know, like, appetizers are fancy, right? They're hungry, so they're more willing to try stuff. And there's like no pressure. I just put it on the table and leave it there and they know that they can try it. So the pre-meal appetizer plate, wonders for our family. Try it out and let me know what you think. And if you do try it and it works, put it in the comments so we can, give some encouragement to other families watching this. Are there any other unmet sensory needs that your child has? So for example, your kid, like if they have sensory processing disorder, if they're neurodivergent, or they've just like had a hard day and they're overstimulated and they need some sort of sensory outlet, coming to the table with those needs is going to make mealtime hard. So figuring out what activities help regulate your child, like what I talked about in this video, the pre-meal sensory activities, is a game changer for making meal times more pleasant. And then, does your kid have any other unmet needs? So a kid who's like has unmet emotional needs, like maybe they had a bad day and they're just needing a lot of extra connections to you. Who has unmet sleep needs? Maybe they had a really hard night last night because they're teething or they're not feeling good, or they had a rough day at school or they had a nightmare and so they're tired. They have unmet sleep needs. Anytime a kid just has a hard day, is going through a big life transition, and their capacity to sit and enjoy a meal time and stay at the table is going to be just lower. So when this happens, I always lower my expectations. If my kid has a hard day, I don't expect them to stay sitting at the table. They need to do what they need to do to regulate, and that's my priority. Is there a medical reason that's making eating uncomfortable? Like, is your child associating sitting at the table with something that hurts? So things like reflux, celiac disease, food allergies, constipation, dysphagia, teething, they're just not feeling good. They have a sore throat, can all make a mealtime uncomfortable. I have seen patients whose mealtime meltdowns were a symptom of an underlying medical issue. So consider your child struggling at the table as a communication of their needs, whether it be medical, sensory, or something else. Think of it like a clue, and it can help us figure out what else is going on with your kid and what they need in order to make mealtime successful. And something else to consider is, does your kid have any trauma related to sitting at the table? So have they experienced food insecurity, food trauma? Have they experienced something like choking or an allergic reaction? These can all create a negative association with eating and can make sitting at the table a lot more challenging. Okay, so here are some quick tips. I love wobble cushions under the feet, like the spiky wobble cushions, or exercise bands under the chair. It just is an easy way to provide sensory input and wiggles at the table. I love bringing a comfort item to the table, sitting them in the chair next to the child, having that comfort item in their lap. Maybe it's like a plastic toy and you're gonna feed them the food while your child is eating, something to help them feel comfortable and enjoy the mealtime experience. Visual timers, they can be really helpful to helping your kid stay at the table. So assuming that all of your child's needs are met, a visual timer can help them see how much time is left in mealtime before it's time to play. Again, visual timers cannot be great for some kids and they can be really useful for other kids. So it just depends on your own family. In my family, a visual timer is really helpful, and we set them in small numbers. So for my 3-year-old, last night, he said, I'm done eating. But in our house, mealtime isn't just about eating. It's about the family experience. It's about staying together, talking about our days. So sometimes if he's done eating, I ask him to and let him know, okay, you can get down from the table. You need to be around the table. We're still enjoying your mealtime. So you can stand at the table if you want. Sometimes he'll ask for a timer. I'll say, how many minutes are left? So we'll set a timer and it's 5 minutes or 3 minutes. Oh, I give kids lots of warnings before it's time to come to the table. So I let them know, hey, dinner's in 10 minutes. We're going to come to the table in 10 minutes. I'll set a timer. I'll give them a 5-minute warning, a 3-minute warning, a 1-minute warning. So they're not feeling like they're in this really fun game and I'm just stopping it and saying, stop having fun and come to the table. Because I would not like that. If I was in the middle of a Grey's Anatomy episode and I had 3 minutes left and my husband just shut it off and told me to come eat, I would be very very annoyed. My kids probably feel like that too, so that's why I give them lots of warning. I ask my kids to help set the table and prep the table or cook dinner to ease the transition, to make them feel like invested in sitting at the table, especially when my kids help cook dinner. They love coming to the table because everyone compliments them about how wonderful the food is. Everybody thanks them for help cooking and they just eat it up. Firm boundaries and consistent routine, being considerate any additional needs that your child might have had that day, that's important. So in our house, a common saying is, you don't have to eat the food, but you have to participate in mealtime. You need to come to the table. I don't always require sitting. Sometimes I allow my kids to stand around the table. We do lots of wiggle breaks. So sometimes they'll get down from their chair and they'll wiggle and dance around and come back to the table to like get their wiggles out. But in our house, unless somebody is sick or there's something extreme that happened, everybody comes to the table and is around the table to participate in meal times. Because honestly, that's the most important thing to me. It's not as important that their butts are in the chair. It's that they're experiencing the food, the connection, and the family that we can get at mealtime. And they can have that experience if their butts are in the chair or if they're standing. And keep in mind that, if your child is 3 or 5 or 7 and they struggle sitting at the table, they have a long way to go to adulthood. And sometimes we can help them practice sitting at the table. And sometimes it's okay if they don't want to sit at the table. Because your kid struggles to sit at the table when they're 3 years old doesn't mean that your kid is going to be 30 years old and at a business dinner and unable to participate at the table. They're learning. And don't we want to teach them that the most important part of mealtime is not that their butts are in the chair, but that they're participating and engaging with the connection and the culture and the food that happens at mealtime? I think so. So I hope that reframe was helpful, because I see that a lot of families come talk to me and ask, my kid wants to sit at the table, and sometimes I'll say, do they really need to? Sometimes the answer to that is yes, and sometimes maybe the answer is no. Anyways, I love this topic. I like the reframes that come from it. I like the critical thinking that parents get out of this for, thinking about their child's eating behavior and the mealtime environment and what meals look like in their house. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Any questions about the questions that I asked you. I love creating conversations in these videos, so let's talk about it and join me in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Growing Intuitive Eaters so the algorithm brings you back here, and I'll see you in the next video.